Why so many people hate Nietzsche, the truth concealed behind. Have you ever felt unsettled by an idea that shakes your entire sense of self? What if everything you believe in is not a truth, but a comforting illusion? This video dives into the mind of Friedrich Nietzsche, a thinker both feared and admired. He did not offer answers. He offered confrontation. And in that, he offers something rare in today's world: the challenge to think for yourself. Stay with us as we explore why Nietzsche provokes such intense emotions and what that says about our own psychological defense mechanisms. This is not just philosophy. It is a mirror held up to your beliefs, your fears, and your freedom. If you've ever asked yourself what it means to live authentically, you are exactly where you need to be. Nietzsche. Why does he make the whole world both admire and feel uneasy? There are thinkers who invite admiration, and there are those who provoke discomfort. Nietzsche does both. He steps into the collective consciousness like a thunderstorm across a quiet sky. For some, he is a beacon of radical insight. For others, a dangerous force challenging everything sacred. Why does one man's voice echo with such intensity through time? Nietzsche did not seek to soothe. He sought to awaken. His words were not crafted to comfort, but to confront. He looked into the core of modern morality and declared it rooted not in strength, but in resentment. He claimed that what we call virtue may be nothing more than a clever disguise for fear, guilt, and helplessness. Such ideas shake the very foundation upon which society rests. But Nietzsche was not merely attacking beliefs. He was offering a mirror. When he questioned God, morality, and progress, he was really questioning us. Why do we believe what we believe? Who benefits from our beliefs? Are we living authentically, or are we hiding behind inherited truths? This is where the tension lies. He does not tell us what to think. He demands that we think for ourselves. That demand is terrifying. It strips away excuses. It removes the safety of conformity. It challenges us to carry the burden of freedom. Understanding Nietzsche is not an academic exercise. It is an invitation to examine your own life. What values guide you? Which ones were chosen freely? And which ones were adopted by fear? Are you the author of your beliefs, or a passive recipient? In this way, Nietzsche is not only a philosopher. He is a test. He tests our courage to think independently. He tests our willingness to face truths we might rather avoid. That is why he is admired. That is also why he is feared. And that is why understanding Nietzsche means understanding the deep, often hidden, mechanics of our own minds. When Nietzsche exposes morality, truths that make us lose our sense of grounding, Nietzsche did not merely critique morality. He unraveled it. He peeled back its noble surface and asked uncomfortable questions. Why do we consider humility a virtue and ambition a sin? Why is self-denial praised while the pursuit of power is condemned? What if our entire moral code is not a reflection of truth but a symptom of weakness? In his work on the genealogy of morality, Nietzsche argued that modern moral values did not arise from strength but from resentment. The powerless, unable to assert their will directly, crafted a new code. One that painted their condition as virtuous. One that framed the strong as evil and the meek as good. This inversion of values, he claimed, was not a moral evolution but a psychological strategy for survival. Nietzsche called this system slave morality. It did not arise from a desire to affirm life but from a reaction to pain, inferiority, and the feeling of being oppressed. Instead of seeking greatness, it glorified suffering. Instead of striving for excellence, it rewarded obedience. This, to Nietzsche, was not morality at its best. It was morality as a defense mechanism. But Nietzsche did not stop there. He asked why we continue to cling to this system. Do we truly believe in compassion? Or are we afraid of our own potential? Have we mistaken conformity for kindness? And more importantly, what would happen if we dared to step beyond it? These questions are not meant to destroy morality but to reveal its foundations. Nietzsche wanted us to see that moral values are not eternal. They have a history, a psychology, a motive. They reflect human needs and fears. And perhaps, by understanding their origin, we might free ourselves from their limitations. His aim was not to create chaos but to spark clarity. If we must choose values, let them be born from strength, from depth, from the courage to live honestly. Only then can morality be a path to liberation instead of a cage. Nietzsche did not want blind followers. He wanted awake individuals. And that begins by asking not what is right, but why we think so. God is dead. A philosophical declaration or the tolling bell of doom. Few phrases in philosophy have provoked more confusion than Nietzsche's statement that God is dead. It has been misread as triumph, despair, or mockery. But at its core, it is none of these. It is a diagnosis. Nietzsche observed that traditional belief systems were losing their grip on modern consciousness. Faith, once a compass, was now a fading echo. People still used religious words, but the living connection was gone. In this silence, Nietzsche declared that God had died. But this was not a celebration. It was a warning. Without a shared source of value and meaning, society risks falling into nihilism. If there is no higher principle to live by, then all values seem arbitrary. The death of God is not simply the loss of religion. It is the loss of certainty. It is the beginning of a spiritual void. Nietzsche foresaw what would follow. In the absence of divine authority, people might cling to ideologies, movements, or shallow comforts to fill the gap. He did not believe humans could live without meaning. The real question was who would take responsibility for creating it. Here, Nietzsche challenges us again. He does not hand us a new belief. He does not give us answers. He gives us the silence. And in that silence, he expects us to listen. To feel the weight of freedom. To realize that without God, we are not liberated automatically. We are burdened with the task of becoming the authors of our values. For some, this feels like chaos. But for Nietzsche, it was an opportunity. A space for the emergence of a deeper kind of human. One who does not borrow meaning from others, but dares to build it from within. One who accepts the death of false certainties not as a collapse, but as a beginning. To understand Nietzsche is to understand that this death was never about the end of religion alone. It was about the courage to face emptiness. The courage to live without illusions. And the strength to find light where once there was only dogma. The will to power, the hidden drive behind every human action. For Nietzsche, the most fundamental force within human beings is not the pursuit of happiness, comfort, or pleasure. It is the will to power. This concept is often misunderstood. People associate it with domination or control over others. But Nietzsche's idea goes far deeper. The will to power is the drive to overcome. To grow, to shape life rather than be shaped by it. It is not about controlling others, but about mastering the chaos within. This force can take many forms. For some, it manifests in creation. In building, in expressing art or knowledge. For others, it appears in leadership, innovation, or self-discipline. In its higher form, the will to power is the courage to face pain, transform fear, and direct suffering towards something meaningful. It is the refusal to be broken by life. Nietzsche saw this will as a more honest force than the shallow pursuit of happiness. Happiness, he believed, is a fleeting sensation. What truly strengthens us is struggle, conflict, and the choice to keep moving despite adversity. In this struggle, we discover our limits and then learn to transcend them. The will to power is not a license for cruelty or selfishness. It is an invitation to take full responsibility for our existence. To create values where there were none. To give form to the raw mate. All of our instincts. Instead of repressing anger or desire, we are called to redirect them into acts of creation, discipline, or understanding. This idea also brings healing. In a world where trauma and confusion dominate, Nietzsche's message is not to escape pain, but to harness it. When we stop seeing pain as punishment and begin to see it as potential energy, something shifts. We are no longer victims of life. We become its sculptors. To embrace the will to power is to accept the challenge of growth. It is the path of inner strength, not external control. Nietzsche invites us to turn inward, not to suppress what we find, but to refine it. In doing so, we become not perfect, but powerful in the deepest human sense. Nietzsche's philosophy and the haunting shadow of fascism. One of the most persistent controversies surrounding Nietzsche is the claim that his ideas influenced fascism. Some see him as a precursor to totalitarian thinking. A man whose talk of power and hierarchy paved the way for oppression. But this connection is both misleading and unfair. It arises less from Nietzsche's words and more from how they were later manipulated. After Nietzsche's death, his sister Elizabeth became the guardian of his work. She had strong nationalist and anti-Semitic views, which Nietzsche openly rejected during his life. However, she edited and compiled his writings in ways that distorted their meaning. She emphasized parts that seemed to support authoritarianism and omitted others that directly opposed it. Her version of Nietzsche became appealing to political movements hungry for philosophical legitimacy. Nietzsche himself had no sympathy for nationalism, racial superiority, or mass ideology. He despised herd mentality, which he saw in both religious and political systems. He admired strength, yes, but not the brute strength of conquest. He valued inner power, creativity, and the rare individual who could rise above the crowd without needing to dominate it. His criticisms of Christianity, morality, and equality were not endorsements of cruelty. They were warnings about the dangers of suppressing excellence in the name of comfort. He feared a world where people were made small in the name of safety, where ambition was discouraged, and where mediocrity ruled. To blame Nietzsche for fascism is to misunderstand him. It is to confuse his call for personal greatness with a call for collective violence. It is to ignore the deep humanity in his demand that people stop hiding behind borrowed values and instead forge their own. Yes, some of his words can sound dangerous if removed from context. But taken as a whole, Nietzsche's philosophy is not a roadmap for domination. It is a challenge to each person to become something more than passive. His fear was not that power would be abused, but that it would be feared so much that no one would dare to grow. Nietzsche's final message. Leave me to find yourself. Nietzsche never wanted followers. He was not a preacher of truth but a challenger of certainty. If his philosophy is difficult, it is because he never intended to hand you answers. He wanted you to struggle, to wrestle with your own thoughts, and to emerge with something that is truly yours. In this, Nietzsche is not a master to obey, but a mirror to face. At the heart of his message is an invitation to self-overcoming. He believed that true growth begins when we stop imitating others and start creating from within. He warned that the danger of reverie in philosophers is the temptation to repeat their words instead of discovering our own. Nietzsche did not want disciples. He wanted individuals who could reject even him if that was the path to authenticity. In his later work, he wrote as Zarathustra, a prophet who speaks not with finality but with provocation. Zarathustra tells his listeners not to cling to his teachings, but to surpass them. He says the teacher has failed if the student does not leave. This is not abandonment. It is the ultimate success. The true philosopher does not build cages. He breaks them. Nietzsche's final message is about freedom, not comfort. He does not offer peace. He offers intensity. A life where every belief must be earned. Every value must be forged in the fire of experience. It is not an easy path. But for those who take it, the reward is clarity, strength, and a deep connection to the meaning they have built for themselves. This is why Nietzsche remains relevant. Not because he gave us a system to follow, but because he reminds us to question the systems we have accepted. He challenges us not to settle, not to borrow, not to repeat, but to create. In the end, Nietzsche does not ask us to remember him. He asks us to forget him, to go beyond him. Because only by doing so can we truly find who we are. And perhaps, in the silence that follows, we will begin to hear our own voice. Tragedy and healing. Nietzsche did not write from knowledge but from pain. Behind Nietzsche's sharp words and bold ideas lies a life marked by suffering. He was not a distant academic theorizing from comfort. He lived much of his adult life in pain, plagued by illness, loneliness, and emotional collapse. His body failed him early. His relationships fractured. His mind, brilliant and intense, eventually broke under the weight. Yet from this wreckage came some of the most profound insights into the human condition. Nietzsche's philosophy is often viewed as cold or harsh. But this view ignores the depth of his personal tragedy. He did not speak of overcoming because he was strong. He spoke because he had to endure. His words did not come from power but from a deep familiarity with powerlessness. He did not celebrate suffering itself. He sought a way to make it meaningful. This is where Nietzsche becomes more than a philosopher. He becomes a witness. A man who looked into the abyss and chose to speak instead of fall silent. He teaches us that healing does not always mean comfort. Sometimes it means transformation. The pain does not go away, but it becomes a part of something larger. Something creative. Something that affirms life, even in darkness. When Nietzsche writes about strength, he is not talking about domination. He is talking about the strength to live through what breaks most people. He believed that the most powerful individuals are those who have suffered and yet chosen not to become bitter. Instead, they turn suffering into wisdom, into art, into truth. This message is quietly radical. It says you do not need to be unbroken to be strong. You do not need to be untouched by pain to grow. In fact, it is through pain that you may find the raw material for a deeper self. Nietzsche offers no illusions. He does not promise escape. But he offers a challenge worth accepting. To stop running from pain. To stop disguising it. And to begin, gently, to shape it into meaning. From the ruins of his life, he built a philosophy that continues to speak to those walking through darkness. Not with false light, but with honest fire. Nietzsche for you. Small daily acts to build a life with inner depth. Nietzsche's ideas can feel distant, abstract, even overwhelming. He speaks of greatness, of power, of self-overcoming. But how do these grand concepts translate into daily life? How does one begin to live a life that reflects the depth he invites us to explore? The answer is not found in dramatic gestures. It is found in quiet discipline, in the way we choose to respond to the ordinary. To live like Nietzsche is not to shout louder or act bolder. It is to think more honestly. It is to ask yourself each day whether your actions are aligned with your truth. It is to stop hiding behind borrowed values and start shaping your own. This is not a philosophy for the elite. It is a call to integrity. Each morning offers a chance to begin again. Instead of numbing your mind with distractions, ask yourself one question: what do I truly want to create today? Not what do I have to do? Or what do others expect, but what holds meaning for me? That question alone, asked sincerely, begins to change how you live. Nietzsche reminds us that truth is not comfortable. It demands confrontation. So, when you feel emotional discomfort, pause. Ask what belief has been challenged. Is it still true for you? Or is it something inherited that no longer serves your growth? Keeping a journal is one way to apply Nietzsche's thought. Not to record events, but to reflect on what you value, where you hesitate, and what you fear. Through that reflection, a deeper voice begins to emerge. Not the noise of the world, but the whisper of your becoming. Choosing silence over noise. Choosing courage over routine. Choosing meaning over comfort. These are not heroic acts, but they are powerful. They are the building blocks of a life lived from within. Nietzsche did not ask us to be extraordinary by someone else's measure. He asked us to be truthful by our own. That path begins with small decisions. What will you do with your suffering? What will you do with your strength? These questions are not abstract. They are your life, waiting to be lived with awareness and depth. The meaning of life is not given, it is created. Day by day. Nietzsche did not believe in ready-made meanings. He did not trust systems that claimed to offer the one true purpose of life. For him, the greatest human task was not to find meaning, but to create it. This idea is both liberating and terrifying. It frees us from dogma, but it also places full responsibility in our hands. When Nietzsche declared that God is dead, he was not just challenging religion. He was revealing a deeper void. In the absence of divine or absolute truths, we are left alone with our freedom. What will you do with that freedom? For Nietzsche, the only honest answer is creation. To take the raw chaos of existence and shape it into something beautiful and true. But this creation is not a single act. It is not a grand gesture or a dramatic awakening. It is a daily practice. A choice to live intentionally. To reflect, to struggle. To grow. The meaning of life does not appear like a revelation. It emerges like a sculpture, carved slowly through the choices we make, the values we hold, and the love we give. Nietzsche's ideal is not a perfect person. It is an evolving one. Someone who dares to look at life without illusions, who embraces its difficulties. And who still chooses to affirm it. This is not naive optimism. It is deep affirmation. It is the courage to say yes to life, even when life is painful. In this light, pain becomes material. Doubt becomes fuel. Loss becomes space for something new. We stop asking what life owes us. We start asking what we can build with what we have. To live like this is to honor our existence. It is to walk through uncertainty not with fear, but with fire. Nietzsche believed that meaning is not something we receive. It is something we wrestle from the world with our own hands and hearts. This final lesson is perhaps his most powerful. You do not need to wait for life to hand you purpose. You can shape it. You can sculpt it. Day by day. With strength. With tenderness. With truth. Nietzsche does not teach you how to live, he teaches you how to face life. Nietzsche never gave us a map. Nor did he promise paradise to those who followed him. He did not build systems for us to rely on. He was the wind that swept away what was false. What he left behind was not an answer, but a quiet fire, a fire that forces you to question, to choose, and to live on your own terms. You may not agree with him. You may feel distant, confused, even resistant. But if his words made you pause and reflect, if they slowed you down just enough to ask what truly belongs to you, then he has done what he intended. Nietzsche never wanted to be a guide. He wanted you to become your own. In a world that constantly invites you to imitate, to become someone else. To chase a pre-written ideal, Nietzsche whispers the opposite: return to yourself, even if that road is lonely, uneven, and without recognition. Live without imitation. Think beyond habit. And suffer without running away. In the end, Nietzsche did not want your applause. He wanted your transcendence. That is the truth his philosophy ultimately opens up. You do not need to become anyone else. You only need to dare to become yourself, fully, powerfully, and meaningfully.